Do you know of a stellar leader or an outstanding organization that deserves a proper shout-out? Nominate them for IBJ's awards. From 40 in their 40s and Women of Influence to Nonprofit and Healthcare Excellence Awards, we're celebrating rising stars, seasoned leaders, and organizations making a difference. Discover which programs are accepting nominations now at ibj.com/nominate.
This is the IBJ Podcast for the week of Monday, November 17th, 2025, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Convenience stores are having a cultural moment. It's more than a moment, actually, but they do like to emphasize speed. And after decades of being the butts of culinary jokes, they now like to emphasize fresh, ready-to-eat food, as well as plenty of gas pumps, product inventories that could rival a small Walmart, and sophisticated branding strategies that market them as immersive experiences instead of roadside quickie-marts. We soon should have a chance to sample a few of the biggest names. Buc-ee's, Wally's, and Wawa are converging on the Indianapolis area, as would befit the crossroads of America. Wawa is the first to market, with a store that opened in May, followed by several more stores, and plans for about a dozen in total. In terms of size, they're definitely bigger than your typical 7-Eleven. IBJ recently broke the story that iconic Texas-based chain Buc-ee's was close to sealing a deal for an Indy-area store, potentially larger than a football field. And Illinois-based Wally's, with a model strikingly familiar in some ways to Buc-ee's, recently provided an opening date for its 54,000 square foot store under construction in Whitestown. For this week's edition of the IBJ Podcast, we've invited an expert in the industry to discuss the sea change in the C-store marketplace and delve into the specific calling cards of each of these three brands. Jeff Leonard of the National Association of Convenience Stores tells us what to expect, where they make their profit, how they're building devoted fan bases, and why they see opportunity in central Indiana. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Jeff Leonard, Vice President of Media and Strategic Communications for the National Association of Convenience Stores. Jeff, thanks for making time today.
Thanks for having me.
Is it accurate to describe the NACS as a global trade association and advocacy group for the convenience store industry?
Yes, that is the technical clinical definition, but the best way to describe our association is our job is to tell stories about the convenience store industry and what they mean to everyday life. And we think it's a pretty good story.
I have to admit, I went on your website. I was sort of low-key shocked at a couple of statistics. There are 152,000 convenience stores in the United States.
Yes. And a lot of times when you talk about stats and PR people, one of the favorite ones they use, which I can't stand, is like the equivalent of Olympic-sized swimming pools. Nobody knows what an Olympic-sized swimming pool is. In 152,000 stores, it's difficult to wrap your brain around that. So basically the best way I could describe that is it is the same as the number of adding up every grocery store, plus every dollar store, plus every drugstore, plus every McDonald's, plus every Starbucks. That puts you at about 151,000. So basically, convenience stores are ubiquitous, and that is the reason that roughly half the U.S. population is at one every day, because they are everywhere.
Good. So today I wanted to talk about the confluence of gas station / convenience store operators or travel centers, I guess, depending on where you are and what you're looking at, expanding to the Indianapolis area. Indianapolis, we like to say, is the crossroads of America. And I think we tend to think that we've seen it all, at least in terms of like what might be on the side of a road. But I'm now gathering that is not the case. So I will set the scene here in the Indianapolis area. Wawa opened its first store in the Indianapolis area in May. It since has opened a handful of stores. It has plans for more. IBJ reported last week that Buc-ee's is in late-stage discussions to open one of its stores in the Greenwood area, which is southern Indianapolis, on a nearly 28-acre site. It's also exploring a site to the north, east of I-65 in what we call Boone County. And Wally's said a few days ago that it planned to open a $30 million store and gas station by early summer in Whitestown, which is, if not in Boone County adjacent. Buc-ee's is based in Texas. Wally's is based in Illinois. Wawa is based in Pennsylvania. Why are these three chains converging on central Indiana at about the same time? Or is this just a coincidence? Or are there market forces at work here?
So there's a couple things going on. First off, we talked about 152,000 convenience stores in the United States. There's about 3,100 in the state of Indiana. And across the country, there's a convenience store per every 2,200 people. So you need if you're in an area that is going to increase in population over the next couple of years by 2,200 people, odds are you're going to get a convenience store because that's just math. But the bigger picture is that these stores see an opportunity. They don't want to go in an area where they feel like it's just going to be a fight for the customer, for gas prices, for everything. So they see opportunity, they see growth in the state. That's clearly what they're saying, that they see the next 5 years to 10 years, there's going to be growth. Not now, but it could be now. But what does the future look like? And I've been to all three formats. And to describe them quickly, Wawa tends to be about 10,000 square feet, which is, think about that as roughly 4 times the size of a typical 7-Eleven, the traditional 7-Eleven. Wally's is about 40,000. So just multiply the Wawa times 4. And Buc-ee's is about 2 Wally's. So again, multiplication. Also, just for context, the average Whole Foods is about the size of Wally's. There's different sizes, but all of them excel at food. And what's really happening with our industry is they are becoming food destinations that also sell convenience, as opposed to convenience stores that, oh, by the way, sold food. And the math bears that out. 20 years ago, about 11% of all sales inside a store were what we call food service, prepared food. And that number has more than doubled to about 28% today. So it is the prepared food. Wawa, it's the hoagies. With Buc-ee's, it's brisket. With Wally's, there's a whole bunch of things, including pizza. So they're looking more directly, say it differently. Convenience stores used to be mini marts. They used to be small grocery stores, open at later hours of operation, a little bit more convenient, etc. Really what they're looking like now is quick serve restaurants that sell convenience items. And they're directly in competition with all these quick serve restaurants.
Wow. You anticipated the last question I was going to ask you.
Yeah, over the years, probably 15 years ago, people said that drugstores were convenience stores for women. It was an overgeneralization. Then it was the dollar stores, and they're just a lower price point for convenience. But I think the real challenge when you're in retail and when you're expanding, whether you're drug or whether you're dollar into food, is it's all around operations. You still have to make sure that you have the right product at the right time for the right people. And that's a little bit more difficult to do when you're selling non-food items. It can be done, but convenience stores, it's been probably a 40-year journey to get to where we are in food. And if you're old enough to remember National Lampoon's Vacation, there's a scene where Clark Griswold said, "I'm so hungry I could eat the sandwich from the gas station." And that was funny 40 years ago because convenience stores were seen as a place of more desperation around food. And today it's destination. And you mentioned Buc-ee's to somebody and they say, "Oh, you got to go there." Same thing with Wally, same thing with Wawa, and same with a lot of other stores that are already in the Indiana market.
What are the ways that a convenience store operator or chain can differentiate itself besides food?
Well, talking about food a little bit more, but a little differently. I think with QSRs, with quick serve restaurants, what they've lost a little is the customer experience. And what's happened is being more efficient, looking at where people tend to how they tend to want to buy quick serve food is the drive-through. And roughly 75% of food at a quick serve restaurant fill in the blank on the name, goes through the drive-thru. And you're talking to a box, or maybe you did a pre-order on an app, but you're talking to a box, and then somebody hands you a bag and you hope it's right. And that's the extent of the customer experience. You're probably on your phone waiting in line, and there's really minimal experience. The opportunity for convenience stores or other retail is, how do you have that experience with a customer? They get to see the food being made with open kitchens. You can still order an app and pick it up, and you can get your coffee, I think, a little faster. But there's other options besides the drive-thru. And I think that's a really important differentiator now, when we've had the past 5 years of COVID and various other things where there are people working at home, and their only time they talk to somebody non-pixelated is when they go to the convenience store. And sometimes that's by choice, because they just got to get out of the house. Their pixels are awesome for how do you have meetings with people that are nowhere near you, but people still want that human connection. So human connection is super important. The other thing is, you really have to be famous for something. And you can't kind of have that Cheesecake Factory menu and expect that somebody's going to figure out what you do best. You have to kind of say, okay, I'm really going to focus on this. It's going to be exceptional. We do other things just as well, but we want to be known for this. It can be food. It can be customer experience. It could be, we're going to get you in and out faster than anybody else. But what's your promise to somebody that they can repeat social media and places like that?
What's really been interesting to me over the last few months is the level of excitement that we're seeing, particularly for Buc-ee's, but for all three of these that we're talking about today, excitement for the brand. Like when we ran our story last week about Buc-ee's, breaking that news that they were close to having a deal, if you looked at the reader reaction on those stories, you would have thought that we were opening a new amusement park.
It is an amusement park. That's a thing. It really is. And I know what you're saying about the brand, because, again, looking at convenience stores, everybody wants convenience. So the interesting thing about convenience, and you look about all the other channels, say drug, dollar, grocery, etc., they're defined by what they sell. And that's always been it. The drug stores sell drugs, grocery stores sell grocery, convenience stores sell convenience. And it's a concept. And that concept is not decided by the person who runs the store. The concept is decided by the customer. And the customer is always changing what convenience means. So it does create a little bit more excitement, and it makes it a lot harder too, because you have to figure out what the customer wants, not today, but months or years from now. And for example, smartphone came about 20 years ago, and it destroyed some key things that were sold in convenience stores: film, magazines, maps, greeting cards, all gone. The opportunity is that with Buc-ee's and Wawa and Wally's and others is they're kind of having a cultural moment. And there are people with Buc-ee's tattoos. There are people with Wawa tattoos. Wally's only has a couple stores. I'm sure there's somebody with a Wally's tattoo, but there'll be more. But there's just something a little different, that it's an experience. And what I talked about before, it's not just the swag. The goal is, when you leave the store, do you have a smile on your face? And if you have a smile on your face, you're going to come back. And if it's just a transaction, it's not a customer. It's not a repeat customer. So what is that thing that makes it a little fun? It's a combination of all kinds of things. If Buc-ee's food changed a little bit, would that change how people thought about them? Probably not as much as that experience where you walk in, pristine bathrooms. It's Disney that happens to sell food, and you're high-fiving a mascot and all kinds of stuff. And it's not a fast experience. It's the opposite of a fast experience that most convenience stores promise, but you're going to hopefully leave with a smile on your face.
Has there been a paradigm shift, if you will, in the industry in which convenience store operators just across the board realize there's more opportunity to create brand buzz and loyalty than previously had been assumed?
Every convenience store name you can think of from 30 years ago had either the store owner's name in it, or more likely a misspelling of the word fast or quick or easy or something like that. Because they had to kind of explain what they were about. They were about fast service. They're about getting you in and out in under 4 minutes. And I think if you say convenience store to most people now, they get that. You can get in and out in 3 or 4 minutes. Now, you have to have that promise for people who want it. So, that is really important for people that are on the go. They want to be able to take a right-hand turn, get what they want, don't overthink it, get on the road, no delay. Essentially, they don't even think about it, which is seen as a positive. It's not a hassle. But how do you layer on some of those experiential things for people who want it and not inconvenience others? And perfect example is thinking back to the 80s. There was a huge discussion when pay at the pump was introduced. And pay at the pump was going to destroy the in-store business because why would somebody buying gas ever want to go inside the store when you didn't force them inside the store? Turns out pay at the pump increased in-store sales because somebody that bought gas and didn't want to go inside the store didn't have to be inconvenienced. So that's a win for them. You solve their convenience problem. Next time when they have more time, they will go inside the store. But what it also did was it made the experience faster for somebody inside the store, somebody that was just wanted to buy a cup of coffee, but was behind 3 people that want to put $10 on pump 3, 6, and 8. So their experience was faster. And so you kind of have to look at these things where if you make the customer happy, it usually works in your favor.
Where's the profit then? Is it more important to sell the gas, or is it more important to use the gas as a means of bringing somebody into the store?
About 60% of people who buy gas go inside the store. But when you look at overall, how do people make money? It's a tough industry right now. For retail's tough because we've seen some price increases on wholesale goods, particularly coffee and cocoa and items like that. There's been huge increases the last couple of years. So how much do you pass on? How much do you not pass on? And how are trips, trips to stores affected by the internet? When you can have somebody that is it more convenient to be at home and have somebody bring something to you? So is that the internet or is that brick and mortar that's doing that? So, there's all those things, and where do people have disposable income? So that's a whole big issue. And how do you manage that? And then there's fuels, and fuels, the markup on a gallon of gas is about 35 cents a gallon. And that's the markup. And then you've got to pay credit card fees, you got to pay operating expenses, etc. Usually most retailers are between 15 and 20 cents per gallon profit before taxes. So 10-gallon fill up, maybe you make $2 a gallon or $2 on a fill up. You go inside the store. Thank you, Starbucks. They've taught you that it's okay to pay $6 for a cup of coffee. If it's upscale, you can make more money on a cup of coffee than you can a fill up. But, it all depends. There's a lot of labor involved with making that $6 cup of coffee. So to answer your question, it's the combination of both. And you want to have as many profit centers as possible. Car wash, wherever you look at various profit centers, put them all under one roof and just get them in and get them out as fast as you can. If they want that.
I would think since the main reason why I get gassed, or I go to a gas station convenience store first is to get gas.
Mm-hmm.
So I want as nice of an experience and pleasant of experience getting gas as possible.
Yep.
Then I'm open to go to the store.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the guy that compares the price of gas on each corner. I'm really kind of looking for maybe a nicer experience, to be honest with you,
Right.
or
Mm-hmm.
a name of an operator that I know.
Yep.
Here in Indianapolis, we have our more 4 or 5 really well-known operators. But I would assume that since that's your front door, you would really want to emphasize that.
That is something that we have absolutely seen. You are more the traditional customer than you think, because it used to be 20 years ago that it was people went because of the price. And we've done all kinds of consumer surveys, what they would do to save 5 cents a gallon. Would they drive 5 minutes out of their way, 10 minutes out of their way? And then a couple of years ago, we started asking the question, would you drive 5 minutes out of your way to go to the store you like more? And the answer was more yes to that than say 5 cents a gallon. And that's because of the food service. That's because of the cleanliness. And you talked about the front door. The front door is one front door. That's for about 2/3 of the customers. The other third of customers, yes, they go in the front door, but they go to the bathroom. They use the restroom, and then they walk out of the restroom. And what's that experience look like? And if, like, going back to Buc-ee's has amazing bathrooms, and that's by design. When you walk out of a bathroom anywhere and it doesn't meet your needs and they sell food, there's no way you're getting food if that experience was negative, because if they can't get that right with the bathroom, I don't even want to look at the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's those elements. Where does cleanliness fit in? Where does friendliness fit in? And, we've talked about a couple things where value is super important right now with people who are looking at the economy and where they fit in. But the other two words related to value are valued. Do you feel valued when you go in the store? And that the other one is values. What do you stand for? What do you give back to the community? Or is it just a transaction and no connection to the community? And so looking at the bigger word value is looking at how consumers are looking at things today. Because if it's just price, somebody will beat you eventually. That's what used to happen with gas wars. And there's only one winner, and you lost a business. There's no loyalty beyond price.
Let's take a quick break so we can hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ Podcast and my conversation with Jeff Leonard about what to expect from the new convenience store chains entering the Indianapolis area. Let's, if we can't dial into these three brands in a little more detail. First, Wawa. I understand that it was founded in 1964. It has more than 1,000 locations, largely in about a dozen states on the eastern part of the United States. Since May, several have opened in central Indiana, about a dozen planned in the Indianapolis area total. And in fact, in 2023, the company said it planned to invest $420 million to add 60 stores throughout Indiana over the next decade. So I look at that and I say, wow, the Wawa strategy appears to be, let's establish ourselves in the market and then flood the zone.
Yes. And a little bit more context. Everything you said was correct.
Yeah.
Wawa started as a company called Wood Brothers in 1803. Started as munitions. And one of the CEOs at one point said they've gone from cannonballs to meatballs over the years. But back in the 1840s, and then they were textiles, they were dairy. And then, in the early 60s, people decided they would rather go drive to pick up their milk than have somebody bring it to them, which is, you think about that today, and it's like the opposite. But one interesting thing about Wawa, they weren't named by a baby. Wawa is actually a goose. It is not a child that came up with a name. But in the 1840s, they hired some lawyer out of Springfield, Illinois, to collect some bad debt. And they have 2 signed checks from this lawyer, Abe Lincoln. Honest Abe worked for them in the 1840s. Not as a convenience store, but when it was Wood Brothers that eventually became Wawa. So, but going back to your question about flooding the zone, when you open into a new market, you want to have enough stores that justify the experience, because you want to, there's distribution is critical. You want to be able to have the best prices and you have delivery to multiple stores. You want to have HR set up, human resources set up, where you're able to properly manage people. So when you go into an area, most stores look at 10 stores. Or most companies look at, you want to have 10 stores or something like that. It also makes it more efficient for marketing, for doing ads, for doing all those things. So when they go into market, they're not going to just do a 1. Now, I will tell you who will do 1 And that's Buc-ee's, because when they're 10 times the size of a convenience store or more, they're essentially that 10 store edition all in one store.
So what is the story that Wawa is trying to tell me as a consumer? What does it want me to think when I see a Wawa's?
Oh, food first. They are definitely, there are a couple stores on the East Coast, and convenience stores started usually one of two ways. They about 80% sell gas now, but they either started from the gas side and added convenience, or they started as a deli/convenience store and added gas. And Wawa only added gas about 30 years ago. They originally thought that, hey, if we add petroleum, people will feel that, oh, maybe the food offer is not quite the same thing, because how can some place that sells gas have great food? Now they sell an awful lot of gas, and that has worked out well for them. But their thing is hoagies, and hoagie is the Pennsylvania word for Subway or whatever you want to call it, wherever you're located. And they're just very efficient at selling really good hoagies. And it's probably about the time of the year where they bring out the gobbler, which is Thanksgiving on a hoagie roll, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
It is turkey and stuffing and gravy and cranberry sauce, and it's nice and warm in that roll, and it's pretty good.
Yeah. How many pumps do they usually have?
How many what?
How many pumps? Gas pumps?
Well, the average convenience store has about 8 gas pumps, but depends on, usually I would say Wawa will go about 20, and they want to have them nicely spaced out. Depending upon where you are and how much land you have. If you're in a more of a downtown area, it gets a little tighter on real estate expenses. But if you're able to expand, be a little bit more in the suburbs, you want to give people a little bit more room, because we've all had that experience when you're in one of those tight older stores where you have to wait for somebody to pull out before you can go in. It's minimal. Certainly near where I live in the DC market, there's a lot of stores like that. Just are tight, but they're convenient. They're right there. But you want the experience to feel really good there and then continue inside the store. So usually and when I say pumps, that means fueling locations. Dispenser, both sides is 2 fueling locations. So probably around the order of 24, 16 to 24, depending upon how much land they have.
Are they all owned by the company, or do they franchise?
They are all owned by the company. And in the convenience store industry, there has been minimal franchising. 7-Eleven does it, Circle K does it, and some of the oil brands do it. But it is largely a business that is store owned and store operated. There have been some convenience stores along the way that had done franchising and pulled back from that and have gone to store ops. But convenience stores are a little different than some of the other channels in that it is still pretty fragmented. About 60% of the industry has 10 stores or less. So it is still a lot of very small mom and pop operations. And then there's about 20% that are 500 or more stores. But you look at some other channels, there's basically $2 store chains. There's 2 drugstore chains. And yes, there's a lot of mom and pops in there, but it's much more consolidated. I think with some of, we're talking about some of the bigger, well-known companies. Wally's well-known, but not very big yet in terms of store count. But you go to some of these smaller places, and they're the ones, particularly in the South, that just have amazing food. It's like a restaurant that happens to be a convenience store that happens to be a gas station. And in those experiences, it's almost like the worse it looks on the outside, the better the food's going to be.
How much does it cost for me to build one Wawa?
Well, they're privately held, so they can provide that. So you don't find that information through stock filings or something like that. But they would require more real estate. In our industry, you're looking at somewhere between $5 and $10 million to open a new store, and that includes building the store, land. That does not necessarily talk about permitting, which can take years and all the things associated with that. But all depends on who's competing for the land too. And in some areas, if they're building in an area that is not yet busy, it might be a little cheaper. It all depends on who's selling that land and what do they want for it.
Right. So let's talk about Buc-ee's. So in my
Mhm.
research, Buc-ee's was founded in 1982 in Clute, Texas. One of
Mhm.
the founders was named Arch Applin. His nickname was Beaver.
Yes, it was.
Is that how we get to the cartoon mascot that is Buc-ee?
Yes, it is. And for people who have never been to Buc-ee's, anybody that has Buc-ee swag, I have a Buc-ee's t-shirt. Anytime I wear that t-shirt, there's at least one person that says, all right, they give you a thumbs up, Buc-ee's, man. And so you talk about we were talking earlier just about how there's something different with these businesses. They have tattoos and they talk. How do you know somebody's been to Buc-ee's? Don't worry, they'll tell you about it. Just a modification on a joke that's been used all kinds of ways. But yeah, it is an experience, and it's a very different experience. Now, nobody's going to go to a Buc-ee's that's going to be in the same location that a Wawa would be in. You're not going to go there and say, hey, I need a gallon of milk. You're going to go there because Buc-ee's figured out that all the things you didn't like about a road trip is they were going to make things you like about a road trip. When people are on the road, they don't want to have to stop for gas. They don't want to have to stop to use a restroom. They don't want to have to stop because they're hungry, because that'll slow them down. And, we're doing so great on time. And they've reversed the equation. And they've made it like, wow, these bathrooms are amazing. I want to stop here. The theater related to the food, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to be there a half hour, and I'm going to spend 50 some bucks because 2 people told me to get t-shirts also. And so it's changed that dynamic where it's going to make you slow down, but it also doesn't work everywhere. It has to be in an area that, it's the destination to the destination.
I would envision Wawa's as being sort of my neighborhood gas station, whereas Buc-ee's is my road trip gas station. I would see
Absolutely.
Buc-ee's along the highway.
Yes. And Wally's is somewhere in between.
Okay. So they have 54 locations currently, I believe, in about a dozen states. The vast majority of those early stores were in Texas. It looks like there was a conscious decision at some point to expand, and then they kind of swept east in the South and sort of then curved up a little bit. Am I getting this right?
Yes. And they don't need to have 5 stores in a market area to find itself profitable like you would with a smaller footprint. So 1 store, 70,000, 80,000 square feet, 100 and some, 200 and some employees, whatever they have, they're their own ecosystem. So they can figure out where the best places to locate. And they want to be in places where I don't want to say this in a way about a town that's getting them, but the big thing in town where they may not feel that same level of competition. Because it's a town that is near a highway and there's other things going on in town, but it's most known for people driving on the road that it's near the highway. And how can they make it something where you're going to want to stop there? And they also want access from both sides of the street and things like that. Not just, this is only good for northbound customers or this is only good for southbound customers, but how does it work for everyone? And that takes a little bit more planning and time to build out the right infrastructure. But yeah, usually when a Buc-ee's is in a town, it literally puts that town on the map.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been to a Buc-ee's before. So I was trying to think, is it the kind of place that wants to be at an exit where there already is 10 brands that I know? There's already a Starbucks, there's already a Subway, there's already...
No, it's the
Buc-ee's they want to be
exit.
by themselves?
It is the Buc-ee's exit, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And just quickly describing, like there's 110, 120 gas pumps. So it's like whatever you think of as a gas station times 5. And, it looks, like you can do 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, and you're still like in line with Buc-ee's when you're leaving. But, it's not that convenient parking where you're going to park right next to the store and walk in. It might take you a minute. It's like parking at the mall. And then there's a statue of a beaver out front. There's might be gas grills that are retailing for $1,000. It is not like firewood and windshield wiper fluid or something like that.
Yeah,
and then you
water
walk inside
softener.
and there's this swag, 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 swag. And a lot of people, and then you pass all that and there's amazing bathrooms. Well, when you walk out of the bathroom, that's where like the theater starts. That's where like the food prep is right there. And, there's just a buzz, and you have to be in the right frame. If you're not a people person and you don't want overstimulation, that might not be your favorite experience. You have to be ready for it because it's energy and there's a lot going on. And it's not like one of those stores where you hear the fluorescent lights because there's not a lot going on. And, there are people that, the ones that I've been to, largely in Texas, like you'll see sports teams in there, like high school or middle school team. They're all the teams in their uniforms. And I'm sure the coach said, hey, after the game, well, I'll go to Buc-ee's and get something. When I was a kid, we went and got ice cream at the local ice cream shop. Buc-ee's you get more options. You don't have to get ice cream. You can get whatever you want, and they throw in the experience for free.
Now, it seems like most of the newer stores are around 70,000 square feet. I'm not going to hit you with the Olympic-sized swimming pool, but I'm going to give you the football field. That's bigger than a football.
Okay.
Does it have to be that big? Could it work at 40,000 square feet, or is there something magical about bigger than a football field?
The first Buc-ee's, I believe, was Lake Jackson, Texas, and it was a standard size convenience store, which is 40 by 60 feet or 2,400 square feet. And then I guess they built a 3,000 square foot one, and they built a 4,000 square foot one, whatever it was, and they just decided, well, that worked, and let's just make them bigger. They are very private on their guest counts too, but from what I've seen on some news reports is they get roughly 15,000 customers in a 24-hour period. And the average convenience store does about 1,000. 15,000, it's like filling up, what's Market Square Arena? That's around 20,000?
I'm sorry to say Market Square's
Or the new name?
is gone. It's and they change the name every few years. It's currently Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That's
yes. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm showing my
19,000
age.
people.
Yeah, so it's like Buc-ee's is like roughly filling up the arena every night.
Yeah. So here's my Buc-ee story. I didn't know anything about Buc-ee's. So last Christmas, my nephew, who lives in Nashville, not Indiana, but Tennessee, got me, my wife, and my son Buc-ee's travel tumblers. No clue what Buc-ee's was, but he gave it to me as if this was the gift that I didn't know I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I since I've grown attached to the beaver.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Buc-ee guy on the front, but I realized this is a very clever piece of advertising that it is seen as being so important to the consumers there that they want to, of their own volition, spread advertising across the country.
Yes. And there's something about that beaver too. I don't want to be on the record as like calling it a negative name, but it's goofy. It's fun. I don't know if somebody designed it an hour or 3 weeks, but there's something about it. It just makes you smile. And I think we're seeing that a little bit more with brands where they're trying to do something like that. There's a convenience store chain in Idaho called Stinker, and they came up with their name. And this goes back to the 50s when gas stations, they came up with names that were about how bad they were to the competition. And so there was Stinker, there was Terribles, there was Rotten Robbie. Now, Rotten Robbie, it's not easy to sell food there with the name Rotten in it. Terribles, it's like, hey, where'd you go get that? Terribles. But what Stinkers did is they totally leaned into this. And they have a mascot that is a skunk. And they sell all this swag with a similar kind of Buc-ee's beaver, but a skunk. And it has that same look where it's like, I need skunk swag. And when I was there, of course I got that. And it's like, where'd you get that? I want one. They even sell air fresheners, car air fresheners with a skunk on it. And of course, what does it say on it? Smell you later. So it's just, how do you make somebody smile and then say, I'm going to get that? It could be food. It could be swag. It can be, they get me. Everybody sells the same candy bars, the same drinks, the same whatever, because, it isn't just convenience stores you're competing with. Let's just say I wanted a beverage, right, in a candy bar. I can get that at Home Depot. I can get that at an auto parts store. I can get that at Target. I can get that at PetSmart. I can get that at any other small format. So why take the right-hand turn and get it from the convenience store? Sometimes it's because it's that right-hand turn and I need it now. But sometimes it's just like, they make me feel better than the competition.
There must have been some point in the evolution of Buc-ee's where they said, let's take a look at what we've created here. This has an identity. Now we really need to lean into the brand. And I don't know if there's maybe they got a new CMO or something like that, but I don't know if it's possible to identify that moment.
Yeah, and I think if you were to go back, whether it's Buc-ee's or whether it's any of these other brands that just have become iconic, and you said, let's just get out the petri dish and let's just engineer this. And I don't think you can. I think there has to be some sort of organic growth to any of these companies. And it's okay, this feels right. It feels human. It feels like an experience. Okay, now how do we do more with it? And, but it has to start with that one store, that one concept, and just a human experience.
Now, Wally's is a really interesting case. And I gather it was founded just 5 years ago. I think in Pontiac, Illinois.
That was the first store. I went to one outside of Kansas City.
Okay. And I gather also that family has a long history in the industry. Are you familiar with that?
The company the extended family is involved in the gas station business, and they had stores. Wallace Oil had stores in the St. Louis area. And so, it's a family, a broader family that's familiar with the gas station industry. And, there's some things there you have to really understand. You can't come at the industry from the outside and expect you're going to understand merchandising, marketing, all those things that go into that. So, yeah, and they're just looking at something that, again, is that experience. And it's not, I don't want to call it shorthand. You'd say it's half a Buc-ee's, but that doesn't do the company right. It is still very much a vibe, and they've created something. They're in different locations. They're a little closer to a downtown area. They're not necessarily the stop between stops. They're more the stop just before you get there. And so you might see more people from a bigger metropolitan area going there on a regular basis because it might only be 5 or 10 minutes out of their way. Or it might be on their way home from commuting or something like that. So it is a little different use case. And the food is really good. The layout is really cool. And it's like these stores, whether it's Buc-ee's or whether it's Wally's, best way to think of them is like a food court in a mall almost, except it's all one brand, and they have a real focus on making that brand work.
So I tried to figure out the ways in which a Wally's was strikingly similar to a Buc-ee's. There is a cartoon mascot of indeterminate origin. I'm not sure what the Wally guy is supposed to be.
Yes, possibly. Well, I'd be going from memory, but yeah, Google it, you'll find out.
Okay,
but there's but again, leaning into something that's iconic and recognizable. That's not just words.
They also advertise having sparkly, clean bathrooms. They have branded food, barbecue sandwiches, snacks. They have dozens upon dozens of gas pumps. And also, the other thing you didn't mention about Buc-ee's is that they're very intentional about not presenting themselves as a truck stop. It is a consumer shop. It's people in a car shop. For whatever reason, the truck stop has a bad connotation, I take it.
What is with Buc-ee's? With Buc-ee's, they don't serve trucks. If you're a 18-wheeler, you are not. They discourage, I guess, is the polite way of saying 18-wheelers, because they just don't have the capacity with so many other people there. It would just create hazards and some issues. So, they're a people stop. So it's really, I think I'll go back to the word destination. And there are other stores across the country that have nothing to do with convenience. One of them that I saw in the Midwest are little, I don't know how close they are to your market, is Shields, the sporting goods. And they have a Ferris wheel in a sporting goods store. Again, it's just about experience. And it's like, hey, you know what? I need some sporting good supplies, and let's take the kids because, hey, they want to be on the Ferris wheel. And so you're more likely to spend money when everybody wants in on the action.
When you have stores as big as a Wally, certainly as big as a Buc-ee's, is one of the fringe benefits, or maybe it's intentional, that you can present yourself to a municipality as an economic development play, that we're going to hire hundreds of people, and that this business very well may attract other businesses.
With convenience stores and most other retail, you raised a good point. Zoning is always an issue in going to a hearing to open a new store. And in our industry, I think there had been particular challenges over the years because we have this image that is hardened in some people's minds as this is what stores looked like in the 70s. And it was much different. It was much more packaged items. It wasn't the focus on some of the things that stores excel at now. And people go to zoning hearings are thinking, hey, I remember the 70s, that wasn't, what I want in my community now. So the key is for stores to present themselves in these zoning hearings as, here's what we're going to do for this community. It is not who we are, here's what we'd like to do, but here's how we help the community. And jobs is always a big focus. Taxes is always a big focus. And it's also, what are your values? What do you give back? And in what parts of the community are you there to also help? A lot of stores talk about how they give 5% back to the communities. And you go on their websites and they donate to this charity or that charity. What we've seen, and when we've done consumer surveys or retailer surveys over the years and talk about charitable giving, the number one thing that our members tell us is national charities are awesome, but it has to have that local feel. And so if there's something that is national, but we can't feel it in our community, I don't know if it's of the same interest, like, research hospitals or something like that. There's only a few of them. But how does it directly manifest itself in a community? Is it related to food banks? Is it related to something in schools? Whatever it is, it's really, really important to talk about that in hearings when you're looking to have a store built, because taxes and jobs, those are very important, but they're also more intellectual. And it's like the head is important, but where's the heart? And how do you talk about the heart and what feels good? And those two things together put you on a better path for getting a store open.
I'm going to let you go because I know the convenience store industry never sleeps.
It was a pleasure, Mason.
Thank you.
Call anytime if I can help you on anything.
Okay, will do. All right, take care. My thanks again to Jeff Leonard. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are several stories in the latest issue of IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, the 3,000 square foot customs office, now under construction at the Indianapolis Executive Airport, could be a catalyst to attract companies to the LEAP Research and Innovation District in Lebanon and the Indy-area's northern suburbs. Daniel Bradley looks at the potential for creating an international gateway in Zionsville. Also in this week's issue, Dave Lindquist digs into the latest efforts to revitalize Broderpool Village, and Taylor Wooten examines the challenges the city of Indianapolis is encountering as it tries to reform human resource practices. And again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say it is quite a bit easier to access all the latest business news and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you're a subscriber. We're running a promotion right now that gives you complete access for $1 per week for 3 months, just to get a sense of how valuable and original our content is. Just go to ibj.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.
Curious about what's shaping law in Indiana? From court reforms and NIL rights to mental health courts and energy commissions, the Indiana Lawyer Podcast breaks down the biggest legal issues of our time. I'm your host, reporter Maura Johnson. Join me every other week for your insider guide to what matters in law and why it impacts you. Subscribe now in your favorite podcast app or at ibjpodcasts.com.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media podcast network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.